Welcome everyone to the PYRESWAP show, and I want to address the rumors right off the bat, you guys. Okay, I don't want to waste anyone's time. We're addressing the rumors right now. Yes, I am now taking pre-workout before the live streams, and yes, I did take it today, and yes, I can already feel it. So, okay, can we move past it, everyone? Can we move past this? I'm taking a half dosage of the pre-workout. It is the Jocko brand pre-workout, and I will say that that's not the cheapest kind. I'll say that it's quite deluxe, and you feel it pretty quickly, okay? I'm already hydrating, I think, at a very, very above average rate, because I do everything above average, and the pre-workout, it just enters my bloodstream immediately. It's like I might as well just be tying off and putting it right into my vein, okay? And the whole point of this, by the way, is so that my energy can enter you through the live stream, okay? That's the type of magic we're working here. Thank you, Trigger. Thank you, Pega. Absolutely. And today we're blue. We're just blue today. We're blue. No reason why. I understand that Soul Tomb rugged. I saw that in the general chat. I'll be honest. I'm not exactly surprised. Yeah, if that's true, I didn't even look. Somebody said it in chat. So if you guys look up in chat, somebody said that it may or may not have rugged. I don't know if that's true. I'm not trying to FUD a project I know nothing about, but like I can't really be surprised. And I hope that this is not somebody who I know, right? Like I hope this is not somebody who I esteem in any regard, if that makes sense. But yeah, like that doesn't really help us at all, I'll tell you that. Does that make sense? Because that is in fact, that confirms like the general perception around Tomb Forks, in my opinion. But anyways, that's not a problem. Not a problem at all. Solana was going to be its own thing anyway, right? Like, and we're not on Solana today. So I wish, I feel bad for anybody who, I guess, got defrauded. Really, yeah. But arguably, I mentioned this yesterday. I'll say it again. New acronym we're going to start using when we start shifting our attention back to the Tomb Forks we already have, meaning 2 ohm, 3 ohm, Z ohm, Frozen Tomb, Snow Tomb, Dibs, etc., Hoggy, Ribs, and Affogato, which we have not launched yet. We're going to start calling them SSPs, okay? This is going to be the acronym. And SSP stands for Seigniorage, Share, Primitive. And we're going to call it a primitive, and we're not going to call it a protocol, because I don't know why the word protocol is used to describe. No, Seigniorage, Share, Primitive, because, Jeffrey, what needs to be shifted around the way that Tomb Forks are looked at is that they're not a complete project. Does that make sense? And thank you, Facundo Martin 9000 here on Twitter. Does that make sense? They're not a complete project. Understand they're like a primitive. And there you have it. Yep. And there you have Alessio has posted a screenshot in the general chat for those of you that are interested. And it is what it is. Yeah, that doesn't help us, like, as far as reputation goes, right? But again, we stopped marketing with Tomb Forks after I left the consensus event at Phantom. Does that make sense? Like, that was when I made the decision. Because every time I talked about Tomb Forks at the Phantom consensus event, every time I told people that I acquired 2 ohm and 3 ohm, they got tense. Yeah, does that make sense? They could not understand. Yeah. They can, Pega. Yeah, they can, because they are primitives and not projects. Does that make sense? It is what it is. It is what it is. But it's okay, guys. It's okay. Again, we will be calling 2 ohm, 3 ohm, and Z ohm, and all the others SSPs. I will be rewriting the documentation later. And when we launch these things, literally on the first page of the documentation, it's important to understand that forks of Tomb Finance are not complete projects, but rather primitives. Therefore, if they do not have a use case installed in them, they effectively just collapse. They don't have any reason to exist. Make sense? Right? I think you guys will understand me here, right? And I'm picking on the marker label again. Hang on a second. Okay, guys, I have other stuff to talk about today too, not just Soul Tomb. Yeah. Like I'll say, Javery, like literally, like this will be a phase 2 thing. This will technically be a phase 1 thing. Yeah, because we won't start phase 2 until we have the 9 forks plugged in. Does that make sense? So when we are launching Ribs Money, we will. I will be writing the Ribs Money docs, and the Ribs Money docs will probably be the first docs that use this terminology. Does that make sense to you guys? So yeah, that'll still happen in phase 1. Yeah, and again, how long does phase 1 last? As long as it takes to prove the concept on all 3 chains, and also build enough of a user base where we can keep launching. Good news is, guys, I have everything is moving towards me now. Legitimately, there's a strategy I was reading today. I was literally studying all day. You can ask Pirate Producer. I have been sitting in a chair over there since about 2 a.m. just reading and taking notes about things like launches, about things like ambassador programs, about things like advertising. Yeah, legitimately, I have a gigantic notebook. I'll show it to you guys later. Pirate Producer says that next time he's going to put a camera on me and just do a time lapse of when I do these 7-hour study sessions in order to solve these problems. Point being is, this book literally talks about how you launch anything. Legitimately, like it says like every 4 to 6 weeks you want to do an update and get behind the scenes things that are working. And when I was doing that for PYRESWAP back in 2023, it wasn't frequent enough. It was like we only did it maybe like 3 times in the whole year. Does that make sense? But then it just talks about like the actual cadence that you want to check in with people, give them updates, give them behind the scenes, talk about what you're building. I think that we stopped doing that is also one of the reasons these Discord servers that we got ended up not being effective for 2024 marketing, if that makes sense, right? Because like legitimately I stopped writing announcements in them because I had to focus so heavily on the development side. But we'll be able to get back to a cadence like that soon. And when we have a larger user base, it'll be way easier to launch Ribs Money. Does that make sense? We won't need to. It'll be easier to launch Ribs Money than what you've been looking at so far in 2024, if that makes sense. And okay, moving on from that. This is why, like again, Soul Tomb. They literally they named themselves after Solana, and they named themselves after Tomb. And like, you know, just when you do something really low brand like that, like you're really invested in like not showing that you're anything else. So even if it wasn't a rug, it was still gonna be a fucking rug. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like if they don't build terminal utility, right? SSP needs TU. Without TU, an SSP is unsustainable. There you go. Who here understands what this means? Pop quiz. You're not wrong about that, Pega. In its own way, the very fact that they were able to pull off a rug pull, it does imply that there's a certain confidence that's returned to the market. Yeah. Although I don't like saying that, but I do like that you're able to shift perspective, because it's true that if these things aren't happening, like even Tomb Forks, in 2022, it went through a season where rug pulls were no longer possible. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I know, Javery, but guess what? We're not mentioning that shit in our marketing at all. Does that make sense? Like, that's what I mean right now. Yeah, right? So, like, I already, like, I'll tell you this. We solved that problem back in June, right? In May. Electronic, by the way, he's the one that said, hey, by the way, there's consensus in your city, and Phantom is having an event. So, legitimately, I met Pirate Producer there, too. And legitimately, I went because Electronic literally pinged me about it. I'm like, hey, that's a good idea, actually. And I went there, and I talked about this, and, like, I talked to the Phantom Foundation, too. And, like, they were like, Right? Does that make sense? And then of course, half the guys I talk to don't even work there anymore. I'm not going to get into all that. But the point being is that it became clear, especially with what I've learned about marketing, is that you want to drive people at the surface level to a single thing at first. That's also what we're going to be implementing with electronic. Again, small suggestions can be like game changers. Does that make sense? Like small suggestions can, which is pretty good because the majority of ideas that people provide are extremely superficial. They're like, the thing you need to do is sponsor the Super Bowl 5. And I'm like, what an amazing idea. Like, maybe PYRESWAP should sponsor the Super Bowl. I'm like, why are you even suggesting that? Like, do you have any like route? You know what I mean? Anyways, I'm not here to complain, but sometimes ideas are great. I'll just put it that way. Sometimes ideas are great. Other times it's like, I don't even know why, people are suggesting this. Anyways, SSP needs TU. Without TU, an SSP is unsustainable. Do you guys understand what this means? Does everybody get it? Like, this will be, as you know, you can't really fire hose concepts down people's throats. By the way, guys, I've learned this as well, and I'm gonna tell you guys this, and I want you to know that it breaks my fucking heart, okay? First of all, I know that a lot of you don't live in the United States, but if I were to say the 3rd grade as far as schooling goes, how old do you guys think American children are when they're in the 3rd grade? Do you guys know? 8, yeah, it's like 8 to 9. Yeah, 8 to 9. Make sense? So 3rd grade. Yeah, 8 to 9 years old, okay, in the USA. And you might be wondering, why do I bring up the 3rd grade? I want you guys to know that add copy, and this when I say add copy, I really mean marketing language. Do you guys know where I'm going with this? Do you guys know? Because I don't even like saying it out loud. Okay, all the numbers show that ad copy and marketing language needs to be readable at the 3rd grade level. That's all I'm saying, and that's very recent. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of our user base doesn't even speak English as a first language. So if you guys understand, had I known this a year ago, Jabri, exactly. Pega, you wish. You fucking wish. Yeah, even 9-year-olds could learn the IWV, in my opinion. Even 9-year-olds can learn active state. I'm kidding. But the point being is, Pega, legitimately, in order to attract adults, whether it's, okay, they can still be geniuses, but when people are going to like quickly move through like headlines, I don't know what that means, CJ, but bravo. Chapman, you're not wrong. Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, right, exactly, electronic. And for me, I want you guys to know, when I was in the 3rd grade, I read at the 11th grade level. Does that make sense? So like, I don't even think I ever read at the 3rd grade level. I'm not trying to like flex what a gifted student I was, because plenty of gifted students, yeah. You know what, CJ? In my mind, it's like, well, if you want someone to want it, it has to, you know, if you want to solve the supply and demand, you need to create a reason for demand and a reason for supply, right? Like, for me, it is common sense, but this, again, it has to be dumber. It still has to be dumber, and it still has to be dumber. Chapman, you're not wrong, but the good news is that's actually coming. I want you guys to know it has to do with the Twitter ambassador program as well, because there's really good stuff that I've learned about the way we structure the Twitter ambassador program as well. And I talked about it yesterday, but I'll talk about it again today. And we have 3 URLs purchased, 3 domains purchased. Okay, does everybody understand that 3rd grade level? Okay, here's the good news. In theory, ChatGPT can rewrite things at any grade level you ask it to. Does that make sense? So let's put it this way. maybe in our documentation, what I'll do is I'm just going to copy the entire short form and I'm going to give it to ChatGPT and be like, hey, can you rewrite this in 3rd grade level? And then what we'll do is we'll create another section of the docs and call it like, I don't know. I'm not going to call it 3rd grade level, but you would call it something that's just like, it would be more like a more obvious place to start. For dummy section, you know, Chapman, the easy docs. Yeah, easy docs. I like that. The easy version. Anyways, we'll come back to that later. But it's just more about, I'm up here talking about shit at like a fucking postgraduate level, and I don't even realize that I am. And then I would go on like YouTube and stuff and like be, you know, putting off 4-syllable words like I'm pissing it out, and I have zero self-awareness because I can't remember a time when I didn't know this stuff. Anyways, not a problem. But anyways, for those of you guys who don't know, and by the way, I appreciate you guys coming in today. For those of you guys who don't know, there is something that PYRESWAP offers to people that is extremely broad, and it's actually something that everybody in Web3 is looking for. I mentioned it yesterday. Who remembers? What is, don't think technical, but think more conceptual, think more of a value offering. It's not that, CJ, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you staying on brand. I appreciate you. Yet cynical, close. Indeed, Maddie, yes, indeed. So for those of you who don't know, the thing that PYRESWAP, and really I mean PyreBNB, PyrePhantom, and PyreAVAX offers people that is easy to understand. They do not need to watch a video if they don't want to. They don't need to think about terminal utility. They don't need to think about metatrage. They don't need to think about doing a sequential flowchart. They don't need any of that at all. CJ, I always knew you'd make it, okay? CJ, I always knew you'd make it. Oh, see, that must be why it's working. I'm kidding, sir. I'm kidding. CJ, next time just take the credit. Okay, it's obviously a meme coin. Manny, but let's stay on topic, everybody. And I appreciate everybody's bullishness. What is the thing that everybody in Web3 needs, but they don't know? And when I mean they don't know, I mean Michael Saylor doesn't know. Robert Breedlove doesn't know. Pompliano doesn't know. Donald Trump doesn't know. Elon Musk doesn't know. Does that make sense? Like, whoever you think is smart or whatever, they don't know this. And what they don't know is truly when to sell. Now they might have a strategy for when to sell. Well, Alessio, that too, but think more conceptual. Well, right, CJ, again, selling sucks because you're like, okay, but when and where and why? Because you have to, in order to sell smartly on price charts, you have to have your own criteria for selling. And quite often, when it comes to crypto, you don't know how high something could go. Does that make sense? Like meme coins, is it going to go double? Is it going to go 200x? The whole thing is so extremely vague that people who end up even seeing temporary success, they might end up holding the bag through a meme coin crashing, and they're still like, but maybe it'll go back up again. They don't know because when to sell is so ambiguous. Does that make sense? So what do the PYRESWAP tokens offer? Like, what is our opportunity, our value add, as it were, that no other tokens really focus on in Web3, right? Well, that's true, CJ, but also specifically fundamental analysis. Correct, Alessio. So what that means, CJ, you're not wrong there as well. Correct, because now you have a TWAP, you have a threshold, you have that ratio. Cynical, correct. Yeah, and I would say that even options have formulas behind them. But yes, I get what you're saying. They don't exactly. So, but hey, cynical. Guess what? This applies to Bitcoin. It applies to meme coins. It applies to NFTs. Does that make sense? Across Web3, when to sell is like a very vague area. Does that make sense? Indeed. So here's the good news. Why so cynical? Get this. What does PyrePhantom actually clearly have, though? Does that make sense? What does PyrePhantom offer you here, though, that no other coin offers you? Not even that, CJ. Nope, it's not even the utility. Yep. The utility is why it deflates. Does that make sense? The utility is the reason for this. But like, what does it offer you? Dr. Mac is, yes. Exactly, Alessio. Yeah. Basically, Dr. Mac, Alessio, and Maddie all kind of got it correct. It gives you, yeah. Oh, man, we need more ink for the blue one. Pyre Phantom tells you when to sell. Well, yes, Alessio, I believe you were here yesterday too. But does this make sense to you guys? And I do mean Pyre AVAX and Pyre BNB as well. Do you guys get it? And the fact that Pyre Phantom, Pyre BNB, or Pyre AVAX can illuminate this, which is, again, it doesn't really exist in Web3. This is a huge value add. Does that make sense? Because now it's like, oh, okay. Like, I at least now know the general area of when to sell. Now, I want you guys to know, because everybody's planning to sell at like 1.0 or whatever, you're going to end up seeing people sell at like 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. So you'll end up seeing the price chart getting more violent around that area. Good news, like Maddie said, that's exactly when we want it to get more violent. Does that make sense to you guys? Legitimately, once we're up there, I don't care anymore. Does that make sense? Like, I've proved my concept. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And I have a, can you guys hear me? Because I had a notification. Okay, I got to rejoin, hang on. Check, yeah, I can. Audio check. Oh, here it's muted, hang on. Audio check, okay. All right, audio check, okay. Fantastic, that's what I mean. So like legitimately, on a conceptual level, it's returned my audio back. Cynical, you're not wrong. And Cynical, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong, 0.8. Yeah, because again, somebody is going to, and by the way, Cynical, they're not going to sell the whole amount either, because some people will figure out, CJ might be one of them, that if everybody's selling, this is the moment to deepen liquidity. Does that make sense? Right? So like certain people will be like, okay, well now I can buy at a discount and then deepen liquidity. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, people selling at 0.8, that's still a very competitive reason to buy, because going from 0.8 to peg is a 25% gain. Make sense? Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And Cynical, this is exactly how it's designed. Because this project allows you to exit, it makes it safer to stay. Do you guys understand that? Like, we're not like, oh, please don't leave. In fact, I think some of you guys are probably mad at me with how little I do to, like, you know what I mean? But again, it allows her to be confident. It's like, well, you guys understand that already. Yeah, you guys get what I'm saying. But yeah, legitimately, like, what does it do? It allows you to know when to sell, right? And same with the Tomb Fork peg coins too, right? Indeed. And the terminal utility, that is the deflationary utility. I gotta unmute again. Check. Okay. Yeah. All right. My audio stayed this time. Yeah. The deflationary utility is the reason why it happens. But I'll explain this. What I've learned when it comes to advertising is that if you make your core offer something that, let's put it this way, the vast majority of speculators are looking for, all the stuff that Pyre Phantom has with it, like the Incarnation Witch Vault or Metatrage, those end up being the bonuses, if that makes sense. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like the even though I'm a fucking economist, so when I think about the IWV, I'm like, oh shit, this is brilliant. You've decentralized the responsibility of burning, and you've created a reason to buy the token, right? It's the same way with Metatrage. Like, hey, guess what? You don't gotta burn the token. They'll burn the token. They can make money from burning the token. Does that make sense? Like, I fucking would love nothing more than to bask in an ocean of praise that these two things were invented to make this possible. But most people, when they drive a car, they don't care about the components under the hood. Does that make sense? So I'm LARPing over this like I'm a mechanic, right? I'm drooling over it. But the fact of the matter is that when other people look at a car, they're just like, Okay, but does it get me from point A to point B? Does that make sense? Like, am I gonna die when I drive this thing? Does that make sense? Right? So legitimately, like, what's the value add? Like, what's the value to them about the Pyre gas tokens? These tokens have fundamental analysis. And because they have fundamental analysis, you now know where you should sell. Does that make sense? You know, why so cynical? Things like Bluetooth and cup holders clearly matter. Javer, you're not wrong. And the fact of the matter is, a car being reliable is how a car keeps getting driven. So meme coins that crash, like cars, they get totaled. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So the thing about our vehicles is that they can crash and they won't be totaled. Do you guys get the metaphor? You guys get what I'm saying? Indeed, exactly. Yeah, but anyways, point being is, as we get more Twitter ambassadors, also known as affiliates, right? As we get more Twitter ambassadors, I've been realizing even the people that are in this chat right now, and you guys promote us on Twitter, we're going to be arming you guys. We are going to be arming you guys with something called a lead magnet. And this lead magnet is in fact 3 different websites. I'm going to tell you guys the websites. You ready? They're not deployed yet. I'll just tell you the URLs now. CJ, you're correct. That's a cultural problem. But again, in order for us to fix it, project has to be more famous first. So I'm gonna change the marker color because the blue's not really doing it for me right now. But yeah. Okay, so these 3 domains have now been purchased. Can you guys read that? I don't know if you can. The domain is howtotellwhentosell.com, howtotellwhentosell.info, and howtotellwhentosell.xyz. And each one of these will be customized for the 3 Pyre gas tokens. Does that make sense? It'll be the same message, but legitimately, you're gonna know that one of them is for Phantom. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one of them will be Pyre Phantom. I think this one will be Pyre BNB, Pyre AVAX, and Pyre Phantom in that order. Does that make sense? The .com is going to be for Pyre BNB because BNB is like the more famous of the chains. Does that make sense? And I think .xyz is like a more a .xyz domain is like so very DeFi that I think it kind of like vibes with Phantom being lower in the alphabet as well. Does that make sense? Anyway, I guess .info is going to be the Pyre AVAX one. But the point being is that this, how to tell when to sell, it will use 3rd grade reading language. Electronic, well, we can do that for phase 2. How about that? We can do that for phase 2. Cynical, by the way, we also are very close to 2,700 total Discord members as well. I don't know why, but yeah, while you guys were over there drooling over Soul Tomb, somehow we almost got, I don't know, a few dozen members. Yeah, so we're also at all-time high for Discord members as well. But no, why so cynical? The answer is no. During, yeah, it's been higher than that, yeah. But it is, I will agree that it, also, why so cynical? We now have short-form content getting pumped out on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook and Instagram too. So like we're slowly growing the follower bases there, which ends up, especially on YouTube, increasing our live stream audience and then also trickling into the Discord, to be clear. Does that make sense? I think I get what you're saying, CJ. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Why so cynical? I am also not young enough where I feel like I belong on TikTok. Does that make sense? But believe it or not, TikTok is not complete brain rot. And there is a certain section of it that people are, in fact, what you could call above average, at least IQ, like at least 51%. And yeah, it's like Gen Z, and a lot of it is, a lot of it, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I just watched that even. And a lot of it is like, it's AI generated weird stuff. But yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's very, very, I guess what you call vulgar. Like short form content quite often is vulgar. But point being is, the content that we've been posting, which is literally like economic top 5 lists. We did top 5 wine producers. We did top 5 tobacco producers. We did top 5 chocolate producers. You can go look at PYRESWAP on Instagram or whatever you want. Like search for PYRESWAP on TikTok or search for PYRESWAP on Instagram. You can look at our posts. Some of them have gotten 1,800 or 1,900. Well, one of them has hit 1,900 views. The rest of them have gotten like a few hundred. But we also don't really expect more than that now. We're kind of seasoning the machine. Does that make sense? We're also posting at like all these random times in order for the AI to figure out when the golden hours are, if that makes sense as well. Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, is Kia Dezo on here? Yeah, we have another form of content that has already been demonstrated, and it's an economics quiz. So it literally, the one that I saw was actually a DeFi quiz, and it literally says, what's Bitcoin's total supply? And it gives you these multiple choice questions. Anyways, the point being is, we will now be threading other forms of content. Holy shit, I am popular right now. And I lost it again? Okay. Holy shit, I'm popular right now. I've gotten multiple. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Audio check. Okay. Yeah. Holy shit, I'm popular. It's the pre-workout, you guys. It's literally just emanating from me. Do you guys feel energized? I know I fucking do. Right? We should get sponsored by a pre-workout. Anyways, we should do PYRESWAP pre-workout merch later on. Okay, write that down. All right, I'm kidding. I do know where you can white label pre-workout though. But anyways, that would be hilarious. Anyways, these 3 websites, they will be 3rd grade level reading, which again is like 9-year-old level reading, and it basically explains why you don't know when to sell in Web3. It literally will say, it'll talk about like, how high is Bitcoin going to go? How high is that meme coin going to go? Nobody really knows. They have ideas, but nobody really knows. Like Michael Saylor doesn't know. You know what I mean? Anybody who think knows doesn't know. But what does PYRESWAP have that everybody kind of wants to know, but that no other project really has? And is that we know when to sell. So like that right there, that is the broadest, easiest thing to get somebody to want to learn more about the project. Does that make sense to you guys? So the point being is that these 3 websites will literally feed directly to this Discord. The Discord we're in right now. So legitimately, all of our ambassadors are going to be armed with these websites. You guys will also be armed with these websites. Oh my God. Yep, twice now. Yeah, but it's also, it's multiple people calling me. I'm not even joking. Okay, can you guys hear me? Fantastic. We're like still, we still got 20 minutes left. Holy shit. Bullish. Yeah, I feel like when people are trying to get a hold of me, that's bullish. Some of those calls were good news for PYRESWAP too, in its own way. It's a person that, if they're contacting me, it very likely means support is coming, if that makes sense. But anyways, and I literally just hung up on him twice. But not at this time. I'm so cynical. Let me get back to you. But I think there might be like some who cares? And it wasn't Conor McGregor. I'm not gonna say who it was. It was Conor. Okay. Anyways, more on this later. Today is Training Tuesday. I wanted to talk about tariffs, you guys. Everybody's talking about tariffs, so we're gonna talk about tariffs. Do you guys want to know what tariffs are? I fucking wish. Yeah, I fucking wish I could Hasbulla. All right, you guys excited to learn? Do you guys have your learning caps on? Okay. I have been teasing that for a while, but yeah, again, we have a secondary form of content that is literally waiting for me to greenlight it to get distributed, and I have been studying affiliate systems, launch systems, marketing systems, ad copy, lead magnets, what reading level you have to write at for headlines and ad copy. Yeah, very important stuff for me to learn. But yeah, I want you to know that is all. It's a good week. It's been a real good week, actually. Okay. So, you guys ready to talk about tariffs? Did you guys pay full price for those seats? Because for the rest of this Wikipedia page, you're only going to need the edge of them. Tariff. Can you see the screen, Mr. Cynical? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, we're connecting the dots. And you know, the thing about Wikipedia is that it's definitely not third grade. It's not 9-year-old reading level. We're going to make it, you guys. For those of you who don't know, do you guys know? Do you guys know? All right, a tariff. Yeah, Odin, that would be a lot to go over. Anyways, hell yeah. So for those guys who don't know, tariffs is something that have been talked a lot about in the news, popularized mostly because Donald Trump claims that he wants to fund the federal government entirely by tariffs. I want you guys to know this right now, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you. This is completely unrealistic to implement within 4 years. This would take 20 years to implement, like at the quickest. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like so don't hold your breath. Okay, for those of you who don't know, a tariff is a tax that's really placed at the border of a country, and it's a tax on imported goods as they're coming into the country. So tariffs are often used as protectionist measures to basically allow a country's domestic producers to compete with international ones. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of goods in America are not really manufactured in America anymore. Does that make sense? Yeah, but why so cynical? That is effectively, and I'll explain the pros and cons of this. It could do a lot of things. And I want you guys to know that it doesn't necessarily help the consumer. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to understand this as well. And by the way, the guy that I quote often, named Jose Maria Escriva, do you guys know who Francisco Franco was? Anybody here know who Francisco Franco was? Okay, so Franco was arguably a fascist dictator who, I guess, became the government of Spain via coup d'etat, and he ruled Spain for like a few decades. Make sense? I think it was like 30, 40 years, something like that, in the middle of the 20th century. Now, for those of you who don't know, they went to something called autarky as an economic model. Yes, but the thing is, why so cynical? What that effectively means is that the consumer loses the ability to buy Chinese stuff should they want it. Right. So like legitimately, the stuff that matters there is that the Chinese stuff will get priced out, and then therefore, let's put it this way. The replacement of certain things might become kind of unaffordable. It's a gigantic shift to an economy. Right, exactly. So anyways, this happened, and effectively the Spanish economy stagnated. Okay? Anyways, point being is, autarky ends up slowly stagnating the economy. And do you guys know why? It ends up it ends up allowing domestic producers to bottleneck their country's consumers. And you might be thinking like, but isn't that the way it should be? Like, that really all depends. The fact of the matter is, what actually benefits the consumers the most is if they have the most options. If they have what's called freedom of choice. Oh, believe it or not, it is not Stalinism, nor is it Francoism that is actually the solution here. Yeah, the Spanish miracle was an event, by the way. Because let's put it this way. Okay, think of it this way. American producers include companies like Coca-Cola. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, I want you guys to understand something. Not everything that's made in America, especially like on the processed food side, is actually high quality. Does that make sense? So you might be thinking like, oh, well, if we bring American manufacturing back, we won't have, planned obsolescence for fucking, technology. And of course, nobody likes this stuff that's Chinese. It breaks. It goes into a landfill for like 8,000 years. I'm not like trying to justify that fucking solution. But the Spanish miracle... The Spanish miracle was an event that happened in the late Francoist era. Does that make sense? Indeed, Jay Avery. Yes, and of course, Apple will have to manufacture more in the United States. And supposedly they did. I don't fucking know. But the point being here is that the Spanish miracle was when the Spanish economy revitalized, when they stopped trying to implement autarky and they allowed more producers to compete in Spain for the consumer base, and it allowed the Spanish consumer to have more freedom of choice. So I want you guys to understand something. Like, using these things to bottleneck one way or another, and there's actually a good story from Bastia to talk about this. Bastia, do you guys know who Frederick Bastia was? He was a French guy from like the 18th or 19th century. And Bastia talks about a railroad. Bastia describes a railroad between France and Spain. To be clear, Bastia lived like 100 or 200 years before Franco. So he's not talking about Franco as Spain. He's talking about Spain. I don't even know what was going on in Spain at that time. But yeah, he's talking about a railroad between France and Spain. This is kind of like, you can look up the time he meant. And anyways, so they build a railroad between France and Spain. And Bastia is French, by the way. So he's talking about France. And what he says is that, hey, guess what? They're able to make, let's see. In Spain, they're able to make a certain good for a whole lot cheaper than French ones. Does that make sense? Like, they're able to make, let me think. Oh, I don't even fucking know what they would make. I think the word you described was clothing. So, like, Spanish clothing was easier to make. I don't even know if they use tortillas in Spain. That might be a Mexican thing. I legitimately, there's so many Spanish-speaking countries that it's hard to divide it all in my head. Yeah, exactly. Anyways, okay. Anyways, in Bastia's example, he refers to them as clothing. So what that means is, because Spain is able to make clothing for half the cost. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought so, Chapman. What that means is this railroad now lets French consumers buy cheaper clothing that is still useful. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like the cheaper clothing is also lower quality. They're saying that I think Spain had more shepherds because it was Spain had milder winters, so they were able to like keep their sheep breeding more. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, like, so I think in Bastia's example, he says that Spain has an abundance of wool, and of course, wool makes good winter clothing, which people up in north fucking France need. Does that make sense to you guys? Everybody follow me? Obviously, the south of France is also quite temperate as well. But the point being is, now Spanish producers get more consumers, which are the French consumers, and then French consumers get more options. So what that means is French shepherds now have to reduce their price to compete with Spanish shepherds. Does that make sense? I believe we did make one or two of those. Yeah, and it might be Javery, if you don't use Discord Nitro, it just might not be available to you. Yeah, has everybody thought about the Roman Empire at least once today? I just want to make sure that everybody thinks about the Roman Empire. Yeah, thank you, Pyre Producer. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, the point being is, the railroad now derives an economic benefit for the people, the consumers of France, and the producers of Spain. Does that make sense? But guess what happens? All of the French tailors, the French shepherds, and the French textile factories tailors, shepherds, textile, yeah. You know what they do? It's a 5-letter word. Oh, you're right, Javery, you're right. They are pissed. It's a 5-letter word that nobody likes. Do you guys know the word? Bring me back to full screen, Mr. Producer, if you could. L-O-B-B-Y. And do you guys know what they lobby for? Can anybody guess? They lobby for tariffs. That's exactly what they lobby for. Does that make sense to you guys? So legitimately, these producers lobby, they lobby to increase, they lobby for tariffs on Spanish imports. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? Does everybody understand? They're like, hey, the Spanish clothing companies, they're out competing us. It's hurting our margins, right? Therefore, in order to protect our margins, they go pay politicians to enforce a tariff. And what does this tariff do at the consumer level? Exactly. So now, due to the fact that tariffs have now been lobbied for, Spanish clothing, yeah, exactly. So tariffs, Spanish clothing is now equal, right? It's now equal in price to the French clothing. Does that make sense? So now when you think about these two options, right? If you buy in France, and let me draw this out. Let me draw this out like it's two different kind of like cylinders. So we'll say the left here is, we'll call this Spanish clothing, and we'll say this blue one here is French. So now the French clothing, let's say they have like a 20% cost and an 80% margin. Does that make sense? Right? And the Spanish, right? The Spanish, they used to have a 20% cost. Well, actually, they used to have a 40% cost, but they would only charge a 60% margin, right? Because let's say it was half as much, right? Let's say French clothing costed 2. Does that make sense? Let's say it costed 2, and now Spanish clothing also costs 2, but it's now 10% cost, 40% margin, and then 50%. Do you guys know? Tariff. Does that make sense? So the government is fine with this, because now that, by the way, now this costs 2, right? Now this costs 2. Sorry, it costs 1 here, and then 1 here. Make sense? And this is now equal to 2. Did everybody understand this diagram? This is very me. I'm very freestyling it right now. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Okay. Thank you, CJ. Anyways, the point being is, the French producers, they're now insulated from Spanish producers. Does that make sense? They have more of an oligopoly. They have closer to a monopoly, right? Because they now effectively have first rights to the French consumer base. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? And anyways, the point Bastiat makes is what have the tariffs done? The tariffs have made it. Tariffs have negated the benefit of Spanish clothes. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, there's no longer any real benefit to Spanish clothes, right? Like, the consumers are now deprived of this. Make sense? And the point being here is what this means is that they just spent all that money building a railroad between France and Spain. With enough tariffs, you can make it so that that railroad is virtually obsolete. Does that make sense to you guys? What Bastiat argues is that, like, enough tariffs, it's like there's no point in even building that railroad, because if you're gonna tariff everything on both directions, because by the way, in Bastiat's example, the Spanish side, they put tariffs on like French chocolate or some shit, right? So he describes it like it's like a reciprocal political relationship. So baguettes, exactly. Yeah, French berets, baguettes, and cigarettes. Okay, something like that. The point being is that, yeah, like if you put tariffs on both sides, it's like that railroad, it's virtually worthless now. Does that make sense? So it kind of, tariffs also disincentivizes. You guys get it. However, when Donald Trump talks about it, yeah, exactly. When Donald Trump talks about it, he's trying to describe it as like this will be a better solution than income tax. And also, Donald Trump is also very fixated on China. So obviously, the tariffs have are really like it is definitely something that I think about as a. I'm not trying to get too autistic anyway. I described it. In order to take a country called the United States, which is like 26% of global GDP, and say, hey guys, we're going to get 300 plus million people who pay taxes in the form of income tax, we're going to shift the whole thing over to tariffs. It's like the amount of things that... this would be crazier than COVID for the American economy. As far as like a transition period, does that make sense? It would be crazier than fucking COVID. And again, I'm not even arguing for income tax, to be honest. I'm not arguing for it. I'm not saying that like income tax, income tax has its own. Income tax, all it does is like it ends up making the government, I think, view the laborer as like tax chattel, if that makes sense. Because it's like, hey, all we want to do is just make sure that, for those of you who don't know, in the United States, there's a type of tax classification called W-2. And W-2 is like the most common, I guess you could consider like low level of organization around employment. It means you get paid a salary or a wage, right? Like an hourly wage, or you get a salary. Well, Jabri, that is again a better system. It's a clearer system. I'm always going to argue that going towards a system that's easier to understand for everybody, and a system that's less corruptible, and a system that doesn't have all these weird excise taxes. And an excise tax, by the way, are like specific taxes that are used for like special cases, like liquor gets an excise tax and things like that, because if they didn't tax liquor, it would be so cheap and everybody would be wasted, I guess. I think that's how they think about it. But the point being is that it would definitely be wild, and that is the point, because it's I'll tell you this, why so cynical. in 2022, gas prices went high in the United States. You might remember that. And people lost their shit at Joe Biden about it. Oh, CJ, no. This would make a we'll call it a handle, and I guess that would be like a liter, or like, sorry, 1.5 liters. How many liters is a handle? 1.5 liters. Okay, so it would make like a 1.5 liter bottle of, let's say, vodka. It would make its retail price go from like $30 to like $3. That's how much of an excise tax there is on alcohol. Yeah, they put a lot of excise tax on alcohol. Like, the production cost is extremely cheap. So like the excise tax is there to like make it. Yeah, it is really like some weird eugenics type of shit. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But we're not here to talk about excise taxes. Yeah, tobacco in New York City, it costs like $30 for a pack of cigarettes. Not that I'm arguing for tobacco usage, but yeah, it's there because like it's habit forming and it's considered bad for you, I guess. It's like a morality tax quite often. That's what excise taxes are. Anyways, oh yeah, when they first were legalizing marijuana in the United States, they put huge taxes on it, which effectively kept the black market going for a real long time. Yeah. Javery, you would be correct in doing that. Yeah. Really, what Dr. Mack has told me is that tobacco has the carcinogens, nicotine does not. So as long as you're not really consuming tobacco, you're probably pretty good. Anything that's just nicotine, yep, is probably fine. Also, nicotine boosts your IQ, and it boosts dopamine. Let's go back to exactly, that's true. Let me go back to what I was talking about, and I don't want to talk about excise taxes, but rather, okay, Javery. So things like flat taxes, any type of taxation system which is like simple and if like an entire government can be run by it as far as it's needed, I think that's a good system because it's something that's easy to understand. And if you guys know, the U.S. tax code is like 3,000 pages or something like that. And if you understand, that just shouldn't be the case. Does that make sense? It's like that's so crazy. There's no way that this is like in the best interest of the common good. It's like clearly this is now something that special interests have turned into their own, corruption buffet. And if you guys understood the allegory from before, producers will lobby for tariffs in order to insulate themselves from competitors. Does that make sense? Like, that's a real phenomenon that was happening hundreds of years ago. Does that make sense? In fact, have you guys read do you guys know of a book in the New Testament called Acts of the Apostles? Has anybody ever heard of that book? So again, 2,000 years ago. I'm about to tell you a story from 2,000 years ago. Does anybody know about a goddess named Diana? Javery, I mean, we don't have enough time in the PYRESWAP show to go through all of this. Yeah. Does anybody know a story about silversmiths? No, not that. Diana's silversmiths? Okay. So, a guy named Paul of Tarsus. Chatman, do you know who Paul of Tarsus is? Saul, indeed, yes. The Apostle Paul, right? So Paul and I think Timothy, one of the guys that was rolling with Paul at the time. They were in some place near Greece or in Rome or something like that. And legitimately, what were they doing? They were preaching Christianity. Does that make sense? They were preaching Christianity and they were converting people to Christianity because Paul was setting up churches in the Gentile world. Make sense to you guys? Anyways, correct. Guess what happens? In one of the towns they go to, and I can't remember the town, all of the silversmiths, they start losing business. And do you guys know why all the silversmiths were losing business in this town? Because there was a goddess named Diana in the religion that was there. And if you guys haven't ever heard of, there's a goddess named Diana, and I think the Roman pantheon, I think Artemis and Diana are the equivalent. I don't fucking know. But anyways, Diana's religion required silver jewelry gifts. Were you guys aware of this? I don't know if this is that story, Dr. Mac, but yeah. Diana's religion required silver jewelry gifts. Does that make sense? So guys, yes, so naturally what happens, Paul and Timotheus, I think it was Timothy, it might have been one of the other guys, they're preaching Christianity, right? Early Christianity, and then guess what? All of the silversmiths in that town, how do you think they react to this? Does that make sense? Because, yeah, the worship of Diana is one of their major business, that's that's part of their business model. Do you guys get what I'm saying? They did not kill them, but they did start a riot. But yeah. So anyways, literally, they're just getting their fucking money pressed. Does that make sense? They're just losing business. So do you know what they do? They start a political movement about reinvigorating the worship of Diana. And they make no, it's always been about Diana. This city's about Diana. They turn it into Diana activism. Does that make sense? So they literally take all their money. Exactly, yeah. So legitimately, these silversmiths are running this religious revival campaign in this city to promote Diana worship, and they make and they condemn Christianity as heresy. Obviously, does that make sense? And all that, in order for you guys to understand it, this is literally, it's just they were just silversmiths, and since worship of, Yahweh and Christ did not require silver jewelry donations, this clearly did not, that was making Diana worship lose worshipers. So that was losing money for the silversmiths. Anyways, so they start a riot, and they get, they chase Paul and Timothy out of town. That's the whole story. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to know, the idea of lobbying and these political arguments they would make 2,000 years ago, the producers band together. They're like, hey, this Paul guy's really fucking up our bag. And they literally sat down and brainstormed together. And they're like, hey, the reason we're losing money is because nobody's buying jewelry for Diana's altar anymore. So legitimately, they're like, okay, what do we do with all this jewelry? Yeah. Anyways, it's a good story. And, okay. What I'm saying is lobbying is not something that was invented, during the Cold War or whatever. Lobbying has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's why I told the story about from the New Testament, because it's this happened 2,000 years ago. Anyways. That is what a tariff is. Does anyone have a question on what a tariff is and the pros and cons of them? I'm not going to get into income tax today, but legitimately, the thing about a tariff, which is arguably better, is that it's a clearer tax, whereas income tax, it's you have to go to a fucking accountant, they have to do all this math, then you have to figure out what your balance due. So the income tax in the United States is very laborious. In fact, there's entire business models like H&R Block. Does that make sense? There's things like Liberty Tax and H&R Block, and these are franchise tax companies. Their entire business model is based around helping people figure out the U.S. tax code. Does that make sense? You guys get it? So legitimately, a tariff is easier to incorporate because it gets paid once, and then you don't have to fucking track that shit anymore. Does that make sense? The United States has 300 million people, and the IRS has 100. I don't even know how many employees it has, but yeah, the IRS has so many employees. Jesus. Okay. I'm now. All right. I'm literally still getting phone calls. Am I back now? Okay. I apparently have to call 5 people back. Okay, I was also going to talk about MicroStrategy, the company associated with Michael Saylor. Anyways, we don't have time. Yeah, we don't have time today. So we're going to do this tomorrow at the PYRESWAP show. We'll just keep it rolling. Yeah, you know what? And only more popular soon, Chapman. I think we're starting to see we're starting to see something on the horizon. Let's put it that way. I want you guys to have a great rest of your Tuesday. See you tomorrow. Bye.